message up on my screen saying recording stop. Thank you.
Sorry, yes, I was having some technical difficulties and it kicked me out of the meeting. I've joined back in. Thank you for pointing out that the recording had stopped there. I've started it again. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll start again from the top then, shall I?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman and councillors. So agenda item 6 is with respect to environmental performance indicators. I know that this is a hot topic, and as I said just a couple of minutes ago, this is really a starter for 10 as far as I'm concerned, because I would very much like a vibrant discussion about what we see as being performance measurement within the purview of the Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So although the recommendation is to note the content of the report and support ongoing transformation of performance management, I would very much like this to be a much wider discussion so that we can take away perhaps something and make something better of this. As you know, there are various services within the environment portfolio where we would be interested in making sure that we were performing well. And these are outlined in here, for example, waste services, the climate change, and various miscellaneous measures. Such as, power might be one thing that crosses over 2 or 3 areas in that respect. So really, what we've done here is we've taken the information that is currently being provided to the Finance and Economic Development Committee. And you'll see this in Appendix 1, and this is their dashboard that they currently have. In my view, it's a good indication in a one-page spread, but I actually think that for this committee there may well be better ways and more important things that you might want to be aligning yourselves with. And so really what we're doing is we're presenting what that is, and hopefully this will talk to us about what we want to do for this specific committee. I do take on board some comments that Councillor Baxter made earlier, that he'd made some suggestions, and they were received and we did look at them. And what we've done here is we've brought what the current committee has to you that is currently as a dashboard. So I didn't want to comment directly on that in this report because I didn't agree with quite a lot of what was in it, and I wanted to give the committee the opportunity, because I think that's slightly where you sit, to discuss how you see performance measure and what would be useful for this committee to see in future as an ongoing and regular update. Can I leave it there and open it up for discussion, Councillor Mansfield?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Peter Mosley. Councillor Baxter, would you like to speak on this matter?
Yes, I would. I'm happy to let colleagues go first because I'm trying to find some information that I've sent previously.
Okay, that's fine. Anyone else indicated on this matter? Sorry, the text box has dropped a little. Anyone else wanting to speak?
It's evidently not going to be the vibrant discussion I was hoping for.
Well, if nobody else has got any comments, Chair, then I'll chip in.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Baxter.
I'm surprised that Councillor Mosley has signed off a report that he finds inadequate. I also find it inadequate, and I think that there's a lot missing. Part of what's missing is the suggestions that I have made for what we could use for environmental performance indicators. I first raised this issue with the chair before last, Councillor Trollope-Bellew, on the 5th of June 2019 and the 29th of August 2019, and then again with the next chair, Councillor Chris Benn, on the 27th of September, the 11th of November, the 14th of April and the 19th of May. And I put in detailed suggestions, and none of them have been recorded, with the exception of the information which, as Councillor Mosley has already said, the information which is already provided to another committee. The point of the environmental performance indicators is to add something new for this committee. I could suggest, if you look at page 81 of your agenda, you'll see dog fouling complaints. The data is available. We had 2011 dog fouling complaints in 2019. That could be an environmental performance indicator. On page 39 of your agenda, we have electricity use. 3,489,764 units of electricity used last year. That could be an environmental performance indicator. Gas use is on page 40, 6,415,665 units. That could be a performance indicator. Electricity use at St Peter's Hill, which Councillor Dilks has just found via a freedom of information request, that could be a performance indicator. The proportion of vehicles we have which are electric, currently on page 41 it tells us only 2 out of 155 are electric. That could be a performance indicator. There are many others. I think I sent 14. They have all been ignored. We requested, this issue was delayed, I think, in the January meeting because the chairman said that nobody had come forward with suggested KPIs. And in the minutes of the last meeting, in the action notes, we did say, it does show that in black and white, that I asked for feedback on my suggested indicators from the responsible officer. I have received no feedback, and it's clear from this inadequate report that my comments and suggestions have once again been completely ignored by the officers and therefore by the cabinet member. So, any thoughts?
Would you like me to speak, Madam Chairman?
Just going to ask you, thank you.
Oh, that's perfect. I thought you might. And maybe Councillor Baxter didn't listen when I was speaking earlier because I wanted this to be a starter for 10. Yeah. I know that what we currently have is not what might be wanted by this committee. The report in itself is perfectly adequate for the FEDCO, but it might not be what this committee wants, which is exactly what I said. I welcome his points with regards to some of the things that he's mentioned. Electricity use may well be part and parcel of that, but in terms of things like dog fouling, how does recording and presenting how many instances of dog fouling show us how we are performing as a council? The council is not walking dogs around and allowing them to defecate. All we are doing is taking what the public are telling us. And it is a guide for us as to whether or not there might need to be, perhaps a patrol or whatever, but it doesn't reflect the performance because actually, it depends on how many people have dogs for a start. So there are certain things where when you want to assess the actual performance of the council, you need to be quite specific. Electricity use, good one, yeah? Yes, it should be in there, but does it not cross over perhaps into climate objectives, and would it be better placed there? And this is the discussion that I want this committee to have. So I welcome Councillor Baxter's comments. I'm not, the enemy here. I want it to be what you want. The fact that it is on the committee and it is on an agenda item means it is now being discussed by you, and that is in fact progress. So, perhaps let's concentrate on how you can shape what information accurately will define the actual performance of the council in terms of its environmental credentials.
Thank you, Councillor Mosley, for that. Any other comments? I do feel this is an issue that we should be discussing of what we're actually kind of monitoring and what the usage of within the council uses. So can we open that for discussion now so that we can bring kind of an ask for more information in the future?
Yes, Chair, if I may respond. I find it incredible that the Cabinet Member for Environment is saying that we shouldn't be monitoring dog mess.
No, I didn't say we shouldn't be monitoring it, Councillor Baxter. I said it is not an accurate measure of our performance.
Well, I think most
performance here.
I think most people most residents would put it fairly high up on the agenda that the council take dog mess seriously, and litter, and fly tipping, and various other enforcement issues. And you've got to measure something. And so complaints about dog mess, fly tipping, litter, graffiti, they are an indicator of what's happening. I'm not saying it's a
An
target.
indicator of what's happening, but what we are talking about here is an environmental performance indicator, not just a general indicator. And there is a difference.
Well, tell me why measuring the frequency of complaints about dog mess, littering, graffiti and fly tipping is not an indicator of the council's overall performance. It's not a target.
Because they are affected by external factors which the council has absolutely no control over.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you want to take dog fouling, actually dropped considerably during the COVID-19 epidemic. It had absolutely nothing to do with anything that the council had done. It was due to a global pandemic. And more people were out, and therefore, because more people were out, more people were picking up the mess after them. That is not a measure of our performance. That is a measure of human behaviour. And really what we need to be considering here is what is good to be within a constantly updating dashboard for this committee, which accurately reflects the performance of the council. And really, that should be quite clear. I'm sorry that you don't find my approach to this to your liking, but I've got a very clear thing about, what we can affect. Yeah. That things that we can affect are things that perhaps can be included in a performance measure. Things that we can't, things that are externally influenced, that we have no control over, will not adequately reflect our performance because we can't control them. They're interesting numbers, but they don't reflect our performance. And that's the key thing here. If we can get to that, then I'm sure that we can have a really good discussion about what really could be regularly updated by this committee.
Yeah, could I make a suggestion here? Can I get committee members to please think about this issue and maybe email me, and I will have conversations, and we'll bring that forward of what kind of performance indicators that we want to look at within the council, because it's issues that we need to be able to change and adapt and amend to make better is what we're trying to look at.
Chair.
Councillor Crawford, may I go to you next, please?
Hello, thank you. I'm new to all this, so I'm taking it all in. What about, we do commercial waste collection, do we, Dr. Peter Mosley?
Yeah.
So I don't see anything regarding the recycling of commercial waste. Would that be something that we could look at?
Well, again, this is going to be one of those things that is a nice number to know, but doesn't reflect the performance of the council, because it really depends on the type of business that we collect commercial waste from and what their waste streams are as to how much will be recycled and how much won't. So that so that's one of those. It's just one of those things. I mean, if you look at the waste performance report that came in Appendix 1, for example, it's nice to see that we've got our recyclables, our domestic residuals, our garden waste, etc. And there are some things that we should be doing as councillors and as a council to reduce the domestic residual, for example, by encouraging recycling. And so that might be an adequate measure of our performance of how well we're doing about getting that reduce, reuse, recycle message out. Obviously, there are some external factors there that we work with other districts in the waste partnership, but nevertheless, there is a requirement of us all to be encouraging our residents as councillors and as a council to reduce reduce our waste production, and where possible recycle. So that's an interesting one, but that's already in there. There are other things that are going to be quite interesting that I think that the committee could bring value to, that are also performance measures. So I understand what you're saying about the commercial waste, but again, we can factor out how much was recycled and how much was residual, but it won't be a measure of the council's performance. It'll just be a measure of what our customers are producing.
Thank you, Dr. Peter Mosley.
Thank you. Councillor Cottier, please.
Having looked at these things, the sort of things, I take it we're talking like the recycling figures and the food waste figures, and how much CO2 the council is actually producing as we bring it down. would be a good performance indicators to actually have on the system. So as we replace all our bulbs with LEDs, those sort of things would come up with performance indicators.
So energy usage on a monthly basis would be something that would be valuable to the committee and show our performance in reducing our energy consumption.
Yeah, I was thinking of those lines.
Fine.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson?
Well, I was going to mention food waste because we've done really well with the trial thing that we've set up. I think it's gone really, really well. What about when we get it going across the district, if that's the thing? That could be a performance indicator of how it goes when we put it into another area, if that's the plan.
Yeah, I'm again happy to speak to that. You're absolutely right. Interestingly, in the waste performance dashboard that's presented to the FEDCO committee, they don't separate out food waste. And of course, we already know that by separating food waste out of the residual stream, it cleans up the recycling and actually improves your recycling rate by about 10%. But that's, again, not shown in there. The food waste is currently in a trial area. I have an ambition to make sure that it does go out to the district, but that is a challenge in itself. In that there is currently no government legislation compelling councils to do that. I certainly want it because I think it's the right thing to do. It sends the right message out. People want it, yet there is a resistance within the partnership to have that happen, and that's because the disposal authority finds it inconvenient perhaps for them to deal with on a small basis, and that they're not being forced to at the moment, and they've got other financial pressures. That said, I'm working hard to see if there's a solution to that, and I'm hopeful that we can get it rolled out to the districts. And in that case, if it is a district-wide collection, then actually there is again, when we talk about how well we perform, there is an opportunity for us to look at how well we are getting the message out, again, about reduce, reuse, recycle. Because one of the things that we wanted to achieve from the food waste collection project was that people would realise how much food waste they were collecting and would reduce what they produced. Sadly, that didn't seem to happen, in that I think people found it fine to take the food out of their black bin. I've had a lot of comments about people's black bins not smelling as much now because their food is not in there, rotting for the week, and so there's a plus side there, but we haven't seen the reduction that we were hoping. Now, you could turn around and say, well, that's a measure of, that's a performance measure, but actually we do actually believe that there are some external circumstances, and it's a behavioural thing that's happening at the moment. And we're talking to other councils that have done food waste in the long term to see how long it was before they started to see a drop. And in some cases, it's 2 to 3 years after implementing the food waste before they start to see a reduction. So I welcome that. I think it would be very good to include something with relation to that. I think it might be better in terms of performance to show the impact on recycling rate.
Thank you.
Councillor Phil Dilks.
Thanks very much, Madam Chairman. I've got to say I share some of the frustrations that members have mentioned, particularly Councillor Baxter saying that he's been making suggestions on what we should put in the indicators for at least a year, and I welcome the Cabinet member saying that whatever's happened in the past, he will now take them seriously and take them on board. I also had some frustrations about, and it has been mentioned today, the energy consumption, for example, at St Peter's Hill, which would be clearly a start of a 10. I've actually put in a freedom of information request to get that information for the past number of years. And I would say thank you to those that have sent me some information ahead of today's meeting. It is a lot of graphs and a lot of numbers, and I need to look at it. And I'm still waiting for reasonably for some of the other information to come through the Freedom of Information request, and I will share it with you all once I receive it, and I hope that will be helpful. On the food waste, and also, well, on the food waste, obviously, I heard what Councillor Peter said about the the benefits of it. That they don't seem to be reflected, though, Peter, in the Appendix 1. When we look on the right-hand side of the graph, we've got a comparison of all the other, and forgive me if I'm reading this wrong, but we've got a comparison of all the districts in Lincolnshire, and we seem to be sort of about in the middle of the proportion of collected recycling waste, which is not really recyclable, in the recycling bins. And I think I'm right in saying we're the only district, aren't we, that's been doing the food waste?
I did actually say when I spoke about the food waste that the food waste was not split out in this report, and that's why you didn't see the impact of it in there. And plus the fact it's for our trial areas for 3,600 homes, of which we have 80,000. So you're not going to see the 10% uplift in recycle rate is from those 3,600 homes. It's not from, so when you then divide that out across the, across the number of homes we have, you're not going to see any impact on the recycling rate in that report. And that's why I said that actually, it might be of more interest to this committee if food waste was separated out, because it gives you a better indication of what the potential is for that.
Absolutely, I welcome that. Thank you, and I welcome that clarification. Obviously, I was looking at the whole, and just on the food waste, though, is it appropriate now to sort of ask where are we with the? Obviously, the county has said that they're going to withdraw I think they've already withdrawn it, haven't they? What is happening now with the food waste? I'm not sure if it's appropriate right now, but
at the moment, we brought a key decision through that we would continue the food waste collection and review it every 6 months. So we're going to review it, I think, in September, and it's my ambition that that we will continue to collect food waste, and it is in fact my ambition that we will expand our collection. There's a lot of work that has to go into that. We are working on it at the moment. We've got a few plans in, that we're working on, and I'm really hopeful that we can come to a solution of it. But you are absolutely right. The disposal authority had written to us to say that they didn't want to continue the trial anymore, but they are supportive of us continuing to collect it. I think there's quite a lot of things going on there in the political arena as well, Councillor Dilks. I'm happy to catch up with you offline, if that would help you. But rest assured, food waste is right at the top of my.
I know it is. I welcome that. But at the moment, we're paying for it, I'm assuming, aren't we? And does the review come back to this committee, or is it going to another one, Peter?
We are paying. There's a small additional cost because there were some savings that we made that made it continue. But yes, it will be something that we will pay for. But it's my ambition that if we can work it right, we make it cost neutral. Yeah, and this is why there's a lot of work going on in the background, a lot of things being done to work out how we can make this happen and it not cost us.
Thank you. Will it come back to this committee or another one, Peter?
I would imagine it will come back to this committee. I mean, this committee's had food waste on it since the start. I don't see any reason to change that. It sits very well with it. And when it is ready, I'm going to be very keen to bring it here.
Can I just comment there, please, that we did actually support the food waste as a committee previously. So yeah. I do think, and I am happy that it does sit within this committee.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else on this, or may we move on?
Yes.
Yes, Councillor Baxter.
Yes. I think this conversation kind of illustrates the problem with scrutiny within South Kesteven District Council. We as a committee are supposed to be setting the agenda, and the cabinet member doesn't have a veto over what we can ask for and what we can't. If we, I'm not picking on this one specifically, but it's an example. If we as a committee were to choose to use dog fouling complaints as an indicator of how the environment is progressing in SKDC, then that's our privilege. It doesn't matter whether or not Councillor Mosley agrees. He doesn't have a veto. We can choose what we like. So for that reason, I would like to propose, as a collection of performance indicators, the 14 performance indicators which I have put in the chat box and which you all received, with the exception of Councillor Crawford, you all received on the 14th of April.
Could I just respond to that, Madam Chairman? I'm under no illusion, Councillor Baxter, that I don't have a veto. What I'm trying to do is to help this committee choose what will be good for it. You are in fact a member of the committee, and it is perfectly within your right to propose anything that you wish. It is perfectly within my right to suggest why that may or may not be a good idea, and this committee should be aware of the resource implications that will result from having a huge number of regularly updated figures which may not accurately give you the result that you want, but that's entirely up to you. I'm not trying to stop the committee from doing anything, and I'm not saying you can't do anything. I'm merely engaging in the debate.
Can I just say, please, as chair, that we do have every kind of right to bring whatever we want to this committee, but it has to be a committee agreement. We need to have some discussion on it as a committee. So I'm very open, as a new chair, that people do email me with these suggestions, and as a committee we decide which performance indicators we'll be kind of bringing towards within the committee and in front of and asking the cabinet member to answer to. Thank you.
So Chairman, my struggle with that is that I emailed you along with all of the committee on the 14th of April, along with also Councillor Mosley and officers. I put a clear list of suggested environmental performance indicators, and these have been completely ignored in the writing of the report. The report doesn't even give us contamination. The report doesn't give us comparison years or comparison months or comparison authorities, and it's an excellent example of recycling, because what all that's been done is that the officers have recycled the report that went to Finance Committee and said, there you are, is that what you want? So once again, I don't know if I can find a seconder for this, but I would like to propose the 14 environmental performance indicators which I sent on the 14th of April and which are in the chat box as a starting point for ongoing environmental performance indicators.
Can I suggest that we bring them to a further committee and that we discuss them individually, as each has got its own merit? I don't think that, as a chairman, I would be happy to kind of group all these together, because there might be some that we don't always agree with. I think 14 as a group is too much. I think there are some very, very good ideas, and I think there are some very important performance indicators within that list, Councillor Baxter. But I do think that we can't just group it and vote as one. I think we need to discuss it separately at another committee meeting of where we agree on these as a committee.
Well, if you want to kick the can down the road or into the long grass, whichever you prefer, that's fine. But if I don't have a seconder, then I'll withdraw my proposal. But I would like to propose, if not the 14, then the first 7, which we collect as an authority anyway. So why can't we agree that those first 7 on the list that I've put in the chat box become the performance indicators by which we wish to measure ourselves? Can
I just ask the other committee members, if there is a seconder for this, and if any other councillors have an opinion or a comment to make on this proposal.
I mean, would you like me to speak to some of those? Because you know, I just wanted. Obviously, Councillor Baxter's made some points about certain things, and actually, it may well be more beneficial as well if the committee accepts the fact that there is some information going to the FEDCO committee anyway, so it'll already be in the public domain, and that it chooses things that don't sit in there that are additional to it, rather than duplicate. You know, because there's you know, I'm trying to think of how you get the most for your time in some respects. I mean, I was looking at one of them.
Sorry, Councillor Mosley, before we continue, can I just make another suggestion to the committee that we arrange a workshop where we kind of discuss these further and kind of have a consensus as a committee?
I would be against a workshop because I see it as a way of taking the debate out of the public domain and, again, kicking the can down the road.
Well, maybe you should.
It is hugely frustrating that the can has already been kicked down the road for over a long period. We do need to make some progress on it, and to make that progress, I am happy to second the proposal to actually, you know, get a move on with it.
Okay.
At least to use those as a starting point. As
the first 7 are we talking about, Councillor Dilk? Sorry. Sorry, you seconding the first 7 that Councillor Baxter's proposed?
I'm happy to, yeah, as a compromise to actually get on with it.
Okay, I'm happy for a vote to be taken on that. Are we able to do that now?
Thank you, Chairman. If you could let me know if you're for or against the proposal of the first 7 proposals in Councillor Baxter's.
I'm actually for, actually.
Sorry, Councillor Nick, are you for the proposal, are you?
Yes, I'll do the first 7.
Yeah, Councillor John Cottier.
For.
Councillor Ashley Baxter.
For.
Councillor Phil Dilks.
For.
Councillor Gloria Johnson.
For.
Councillor Judy Smith.
For.
And Councillor Helen Crawford.
For.
Should be all committee members, I believe.
Lovely. Now, Councillor Mosley, can I ask if you've got that data available now, or are we going to have to wait for the next committee to receive the data and information on this?
Well, I don't have it to hand right now. No. There's some on there. I think you might find that you will never get because it's just not collected, and it wouldn't be in our responsibility to collect it either. So you voted on something there that we might not be able to deliver, but we'll do our best for you for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Peter, sorry to interrupt. Which ones don't you think you'll be able to get the figures for?
Number 5, for example, percentage domestic waste diverted from land. Well, we're not the disposal authority. Once we've collected the waste, it goes somewhere else, and it's for somebody else to do with as they choose and as they please. And they may well not be recording what they do exactly with it. They may well be recording what they do with it. They may well not want to share it with us. It may well be, in a third party, but it's out of our control, is what I'm saying. So that's, that's why having a nice debate about some of these things before you decide to vote on them might be helpful. But nevertheless, we'll do our best for you.
That's fine. Any more?
Suck it and see, haven't we? Let's see how we get on with it.
Excuse me.
Well, a lot of the information you'll find will be very, very delayed as well. Again, because we are not the disposal authority. For example, we're still waiting for some information with regards to what we would normally get from the county council because of COVID, and we normally get it within 2 or 3 months, and it's sort of 4 or 5 months now. So, you'll have to bear with us with regards to that, and whether that again, because it's to do with a different authority, it won't be measuring our performance. It will be measuring somebody else's performance in that respect. Okay.
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 Thank you. Gary Smith, did you want to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It was really to interject previously on your comments backwards and forwards, as certainly 2 or 3 of those 7 are already included on the dashboard. Certainly 1 and 2 were intended to be included in the carbon climate change dashboard that is described in the report that the performance officer will be working on. So a number of these will be being brought forward, but there are issues, as Peter's highlighted, with some of those elements. But if we can do as best we can to interpret what's the most relevant and bring it back, then happy to do so. But I just wanted to ensure that the climate carbon elements that members have commented on are already being worked on. Clearly, the Carbon Trust report that's published and later on, this report includes a huge amount of data around our carbon footprint, and it's absolutely right that there's a dashboard that is regularly updated for this committee to receive. So that was certainly intended.
Okay, thank you for that. Right, if we're happy and we've concluded on that, can we move on to the carbon footprint report, please?
Nicola, can I just make a comment, please?
Yes, of course. Councillor Cossier.
Would it be worthwhile putting the other 7 through for a workshop and actually be able to discuss them properly? And
yes.
Whether the ones that we've already just voted on come back saying that we cannot get indicators, that we then vote to remove them from the dashboard?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with that. Do we need to vote on that? I'm quite happy to second that if that is a proposal. So can we take a vote on arranging a workshop in the near future to discuss any other further performance indicators that we would like to be reported on and to discuss?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Nikki Mountfield.
I'm for.
Councillor John Cottier.
For.
Councillor Ashley Baxter.
For.
Councillor Phil Dilts.
For.
Councillor Gloria Johnson.
For.
Councillor Judy Smith.
For.
And Councillor Helen Crawford.
For.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. We'll get that arranged and sent out as soon as we can. Now we'll move on to agenda item 7, the carbon footprint report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Yes, again, delighted to bring this. This was requested by the committee to bring some reduction options to the committee for discussion. Obviously, we're aware that we have declared a climate emergency, and this was cross-party support, and I did it with Councillor Baxter last September, so we're not even a year in yet. And I think in that year we've made some excellent progress in that we have now established our baseline thanks to the work of the Carbon Trust. The recommendations of this report are to note the progress and to establish and understand South Kesteven District Council's direct contribution to climate change in the form of organisational carbon emissions, and recommend to the Cabinet Member for Commercial Operations to develop a phased carbon reduction plan and initiate feasibility assessments for priority carbon reduction projects outlined in the Carbon Trust's Carbon Footprint and Reduction Opportunities report, and recommends that the Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee provide feedback on any specific areas or carbon reduction initiatives the committee would like to see prioritised. So obviously there's an awful lot of information within the Carbon Trust report and an awful lot of suggestions within there, and everything that we do to reduce our carbon footprint will ultimately cost us money, and really some of the things that we need to do may well not be technically and financially viable right now, but we are expecting them to be technically and financially viable in the future. So this is about how we now move forward and generate a phased approach whereby we can bring forward some initiatives to start this reduction process and then gain momentum and traction to continue it, to meet our objectives and to hopefully beat them. this really is now for you guys to open up and discuss. The carbon reduction opportunities are within the Appendix 1. Is Serena on the call, Gary? Has she got anything that she wants to specifically say? Because obviously Serena Brown is our climate change officer now, and she's been instrumental in making sure that all of this has come together, and it's partly due to her hard work that we've had such a great report from the Carbon Trust. Is she available, Gary?
Yes, Serena's on the call. Serena, please feel free to add anything.
No, thank you, Councillor Mosley. I think that's a good summary of the report. It is quite extensive and there are a lot of recommendations in there. So obviously our next steps are to understand what some of those carbon reduction projects might mean and to put them in some sort of sensible order that understands how they can be funded.
Do you want to just steer the committee where you think some of the good places to start might be from your experience and knowledge?
Yes, sure. So I think there's been some discussion about, for example, any works at St Peter's Hill, if there's something that we could bring forward there. If there's, for example, refurb works already being planned, if there's a way that we could include in that project upgrading the light fittings to LEDs, if we could consider installing solar panels as part of that project, or even if we could consider refurbishing the heating system, which is a bit of a bigger and more expensive task itself. The Carbon Trust report does highlight energy management, and potentially that's something that we could focus on, installing some equipment and looking to get some reductions, for example, better building close down procedures that would mean that we're spending less money on energy as the building runs throughout the night and no one's there. I think those are sort of some of the major opportunities in the short term. There is, of course, the matter of our vehicle fleet. So the Carbon Trust report highlights that 25% of our entire carbon footprint is from our managed vehicles. So obviously that's a really big area of opportunity for us to reduce, but moving straight to electric vehicles is difficult for us, not only because it's a huge upfront investment, but also where there are, for example, concerns about how long infrastructure might last for. We just need to take that in mind. So potentially looking at measures like driver training or software to better manage those vehicles could deliver an upfront saving in terms of the fuel that those vehicles use.
Thank you, Serena. I just want to also throw in on the back of this report, there is inevitably going to be an impact of the last 3 months and the COVID-19 situation on how this council operates in the future. I know that there is recovery and rephasing or reshaping work going on as to how the council operates its core functions in the new world, effectively. This will have an impact on what we use. I mean, we've all established the fact that we are all here remotely is in fact contributing to our carbon reduction target, because none of us have driven to St Peter's Hill, none of us have driven to a meeting room, none of us are sitting in that room using those lights, none of us are sitting in that room drinking the coffee that's been boiled in a kettle and all of these things. So, you know, there is going to be an impact of that. And that is part of the work that Serena will be doing moving forward anyway. We should be constantly looking at what is likely to happen, you know, when staff start to move back and how many staff start to move back and how we start to operate in the future. And obviously we'll have to realign our baseline based on that. So really this is about discussion. If we can keep it away from the COVID thing and reshaping and look at some of the initiatives that might be good to start with and start some discussion and get some feedback from the committee, please.
Thank you, Councillor Mosley. May I ask a question, starting for 10? On the vehicle side, are we, I know we own so many, don't we? Are we looking at when we renew that we would be moving towards the electric vehicles,
Yeah.
or is it on the bigger vehicles? Is that more complicated than the
Right.
smaller ones?
I'm happy to talk about that now. I'm sure Gary's going to leap in if he thinks I get this wrong. Right. We've already just gone through a 2-year cycle of pool car fleet replacement, and as part of that, in the first phase of that, we purchased 2 electric vehicles with a view that we might purchase more in the second year. It turned out that the electric vehicle technology, whilst it's okay, it's not giving us the range that we need at the moment. Which we're happy to have those 2 vehicles on the fleet, and they're for short runabouts. But actually, it is quite difficult to manage them, and electric vehicle technology is moving at a pace. And I would imagine that in 2 to 3 years' time, we might be in a better place to be picking up vehicles that are electric, that have much better ranges. So that was quite disappointing, but it was still necessary for us to go and do that. And we have those vehicles. And in fact, I did see one driving around the district. And I think I saw it in Bourne, in fact, the other day. So they are being used. But in terms of our pool car replacement, we're not looking at replacing for several years now. That said, with COVID-19, and I said, we're going to steer it away from COVID, but our usage of pool vehicles is way down. So it may well be that actually a rationalisation of our fleet in terms of that might be better. In terms of a lot of the other vehicles that we have, so cage vehicles, street scene, refuse collection vehicles, the technology again is not quite there. I actually think that we're probably going to be moving to hydrogen technology, which might work better for lorries, but again, that's not quite there yet. And we have to keep an eye on that technology so that we do move forward with it. Our vehicles are all purchased, they're not leased. They're on a replacement capital programme. We replace, I think it's about 6 RCVs a year, is it, Gary? Is it 6 or is it 4? Forgot. I think no, it's 4, isn't it? 4 a year.
Sorry, yes, 4 a year.
Yeah.
Or 3 or 4, depending on the year, actually.
Yeah. So we've evened out our replacement programme so that there's a defined capital spend, but also it means that when technology does come on board, we could, for instance, in 1 year decide to go with that technology and see how it works, and it wouldn't have a massive, if it didn't work, obviously, we're not affecting our entire fleet. We're affecting effectively an 1/8 or a 9th of it in total, so it doesn't affect our resilience in that respect. So there are lots of things to think about there. But yeah, I mean, it's an excellent question. I think that the vehicle replacement is something that we're going to need to look at in the next 3 to 4 years as something that, when the technology is better and it gives us the ranges and the performance that we need to operate, I think that's when we're going to see that particular saving.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Councillor Mosley. John Cottier.
Hello, Peter. Another one for you. Recently, I've got 2 actually. One's to do with the electric car points.
Yeah.
How's the project with that going? And the second one is to do with street lamps. How many do we actually own, and what percentage on them are already converted? And the third one is that recently we had a set of smart lights installed in, I think it was Winchester.
Yeah.
How's that project going?
Okay, so sorry, the first one was
the electric car charging points.
Right, electric vehicle charging points. Thank you. Right, obviously we started this work some time ago, and we decided that we wanted to procure not through a framework, because that didn't give us what we needed. So we went the procurement route, and it took a bit longer. We were just about ready to have the connections finalised when COVID hit on the 23rd of March. In fact, they were due to be installed the day after, and then Western Power just withdrew. I am hopeful that by the end of the first week in August, I think all of our EV charging points in the car parks that we've put in will be operational. That, I believe, is the time scale on that one. Bearing in mind that we were waiting on Western Power, and when the lockdown eased, they started to release times for that. We are continuing to investigate the funding that might be available to expand on that. And again, I think it's our view that this is the start of what we are hoping to achieve and not the end in that respect. The second one, John, was?
The number of street lamps that we have that are LEDs,
right, okay.
And how many have we actually converted across from?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number that are currently converted is in the sort of tens to hundreds. It's not many yet because we've been working this, and I think this is the third point, the smart light thing, and it does link in because we, as part of that piece of work, we discovered that actually the heads that we could have in there could be almost IoT ready for almost the same price. In fact, maybe even for less, I think. So it impacted on how the decision would be. And I believe that Gary Andrews in the council has produced a procurement thing ready to go out to procure, ready to get the lighting heads and get the contract in place. So we're moving ahead with it, but we were steered by the excellent results that came through in terms of the energy savings that we got from the smart lights. There was some excellent work done on Winchester. I don't know if you went up to Winchester Avenue. Was it Winchester Road? I think I can't remember. But it was there were four lights in a row, and you could walk along and they would dim if there was nobody there, and then if you walked up to them they would come up from sort of 10% up to 100% whilst you were walking along, and they would influence the lights ahead of you as you walked through there. I was actually quite keen to get members to come and experience that, but unfortunately time got the better of us. The technology got the better of us in some respects because the innovation required was a challenge to the company that we were using, as it rightly should have been, because this was an innovative project. But they did deliver it in the end. We've had also lights in Stamford at the bus station, one with an air quality sensor in it. I'm glad to say that the air quality results showed that during the lockdown the air quality did improve, although not as you might imagine, because I think the buses were still running, and this was at the bus station. And I think it probably highlighted that we should be encouraging the buses to be more environmentally friendly in terms of their emissions. I think that's what came out of that one. We have, Ashley's put it in there, 3,593. I was going to say approximately 4,000 street lights. Yeah, there is obviously there's a replacement program, Investor Save, that's steering that, but we want to use that wisely, which is why we've been influenced by the IoT project.
Right. Thank you.
Councillor Baxter, would you like to speak?
Yes, please, Chair. Going back to the action notes of the last meeting, I wanted to ask, the report which was published after the last meeting of this committee, did it change at all from what we were shown previously?
I don't believe it did, Councillor Baxter. We were having it checked. We'd only received it a few days beforehand, and we wanted to make sure that there wasn't anything confidential in it before it was released. That was why. I think 5 or so days after that, somebody managed to get around to double check everything. I don't believe there was anything in there. Would that be correct, Serena?
Yes, the report that's been published publicly was exactly the same as the report that was presented to the Climate Committee.
Smashing, thank you. Where can we find the notes of the workshops and the attendance list of the workshops that took place on climate change?
I believe that they have been completed now. There was a bit of a delay because staff resource has been stretched really tight with all of these online meetings. I've certainly seen a copy, so I imagine it will be circulated to the group members very soon.
Okay, smashing, thank you. Within the report, I think the key page is page 46 in the pack. I'm not sure what the page 21 of the report thing. It says 2030 carbon reduction pathway projects.
Yeah.
I thought that at one of the workshops we'd kind of agreed, and I'm not saying that that's written in stone, but we would look at the payback period first and be guided as to kind of where we get the best bang for our buck. The climate change officer earlier mentioned that St Peter's Hill might be a place to start. I don't object to that, but it isn't the best payback. I'm asking the committee, I suppose, through you, Chair, whether or not we want to put our measures in where they're going to be seen and be kind of glittery green projects that can stand out for our community, or whether we're going to invest in the places that give us the best and quickest payback.
Would you like me to make a suggestion or two here, Councillor Manterfield?
Yes, please.
Yeah, you absolutely. I mean, Councillor Baxter's absolutely right. You know, there are certain things that you get back quicker, and other things. One of the interesting factors that we popped in there was the pounds per tonne, so that it gives you an indication of the budgetary impacts that some of these things might have. I think taking on board the COVID situation, the fact that there are buildings shut at the moment. If there are going to be works carried out, now would be the right time, I think. You know, that it makes sense while there's nobody using them to get in there and make changes if you can. Even though, I mean, there are some here. I mean, in terms of St Peter's Hill, if we look at I mean, that's a 14.4 year payback, but bearing in mind COVID, we might not be using the building like we did before. We might not be using all of it. We might be letting some of it out. There's a whole heap of things that, in fact, we are letting some of it, I think to the NHS at the moment. You know, so there are a whole heap of impacts there that might not deliver what you think you would have got. But I don't see that, for example, I would very much doubt we're going to be, you know, changing our use of the Guildhall, because that's obviously, you know, for events and arts, but obviously they can't happen right now, and so that building is shut, and it would be ripe for some change. Again, same with Stamford Arts Centre in that respect. So really just to steer the conversation. You know, in terms of where the committee might want to go on that, I think Councillor Baxter makes some very, very good points there.
Thank you, Councillor Mosley. Are there any other comments? I feel we're missing we need to be guiding. Are we going to be taking consideration of the actual officers' recommendations? Are we happy with that?
Well, Chair, the officers' recommendations are that they develop. We note the progress. Yes, progress is great. This is one thing where we have managed to work together through workshops and through committees and get to the stage with proper proposals. The second recommendation is that we develop a phased carbon reduction plan. Yes, I would certainly support a recommendation to crack on with the tangible measures which we've just talked about on page 46. Yep. And then we provide feedback. I think, yeah, we continue to provide feedback. The bit that's missing for me is the next stage for either the workshops or the committees, because this has been a Carbon Trust piece of work about our own operations, which is helpful because it would have taken us ages to do everything. But now we've had this focus on our own operations. Perhaps now is the time for either this committee or the workshops to move into the wider scope of how can we affect our communities. I mean, there's nothing about tree cover. There's nothing about how we encourage businesses to become more sustainable. And the one we talked about at the last committee meeting was planning. There's a really big piece of work to do in terms of making sure that the revised local plan guidance focuses on sustainability rather than purely numbers of houses.
Yeah.
Just to throw in there, again, welcome Councillor Baxter's comments. I think one of the action points from the Task and Finish group last was that I would work with the chairman of the planning committee to see how the work of the task and finish and our carbon objectives can help in that respect. But I do think that we need to be realistic, because national, the planning system is steered very strongly by national planning policy, and we need to just have in our heads that we might have a limited ability to influence what national policy pushes forward. But you're right, there's a review of the local plan, and there may well be some things that could be done there. With regards to point 3, I'm particularly interested. Obviously, I know that Councillor Baxter has just mentioned about the projects on was it page 46? I think it was. Recommend that the Environment Overview and Scrutiny provide feedback on any specific areas or carbon reduction initiatives the committee would like to see prioritised. And I think that's really quite important for us as we move into this developing this phased approach, so that we can take that forward and make sure that we listen to the committee and act upon it.
Can I just get Gary Smith to come in here, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I support what Peter said, in the sense that if there is any specific things that the committee would like to see prioritised, basically what I was going to say is that clearly, as Serena outlined at the beginning and Peter outlined at the beginning, the next steps are, and we won't be surprised to know we're already working on this, is to develop from all the options and opportunities that the Carbon Trust identified and that the footprint understanding and that data set has given us, to develop then into a carbon reduction plan, and that will have to inevitably be a combination in terms of what's prioritised between the financial payback, the carbon tonnage for every pound invested, because they are two different metrics as has been outlined, but also where it's opportunistic or it makes sense because of other factors, as Peter's highlighted, where buildings are currently not in use, or there is other programmes of activity. We haven't mentioned it in this meeting, but we've mentioned it in previous meetings about leisure centres, for instance. And so, there's a leisure programme of reinvestment. It would make sense to build it into the similar time frame. So we will take that away and work that up. The Climate Change Task and Finish Group currently has the remit reporting to Environment OSC to take on board, first off, get the Council's house in order, which is what the focus has been to date. But as Councillor Baxter has highlighted, there were some other elements of the remit of that Task and Finish Group which was recognised sort of as a latter stage, once the Council's got its own house in order, to consider how the wider impact, the community leadership role of the Council to reduce local businesses, local residents, other agencies, public sector organisations and others could be encouraged, supported. We could work together, learn from, to reduce carbon. So that certainly is an aspect of the terms of reference of that committee, which was noted at the last meeting to take forward in the future meetings. I believe a Task and Finish Group meeting date is being looked for in early mid-September. Just recognising August is not normally a period for members' meetings. So next Task and Finish Group meeting hopefully will be arranged for September time.
Okay, thank you, Gary. John Costier, did you want to speak?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at option 3 and going, wouldn't it be better for the Task and Finish Group to recommend anything that needs prioritising for the committee to look at? So that actually comes back from the Task and Finish Committee to us to be reviewed and then forwarded on.
I think we're in danger perhaps of moving into a bit of a catch-22 with that.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for us to understand and feed into the Task and Finish and feed into the phased approach the ambitions of this committee. If you don't have any specific ambitions and you're just happy to go with what we think is the best way when it comes to it, that's fine. But it would be helpful if you did have some, if we could know what they were, so that we could then take those into the planning phase to move forward.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dilks?
Yes, thanks, Madam Chairman. I was going to ask, until Gary's most recent comment, what do we expect next to happen and when? But you have alluded to the task and finish group, which hopefully will be in September, and I understand why not in August. But there is some urgency there in terms of, if we're going to come up with a plan, there are clearly, as Peter said, budget implications on whatever we do, and we need to marry it into next year's budget at the earliest possible stage, don't we? So there is urgency to it.
No, you're absolutely right, Councillor Dilson. That's why I mentioned the budget and money, because ultimately everything costs money. And if we want to factor these things, there are going to be some big ticket items that we're going to have to think about factoring in. That might have to be done over several years and all sorts of things like that. And so having that phased approach where we can look at what we can do and when we should do it and what technology is available is important. But you're right, I'd like to get something in, and costed up and into this year's budget so that we're starting, sooner rather than later. There are in fact programs already in track. If we look at the LED street lighting, so that was in fact passed in last year's budget and on an investor save. So that's something we can work on straight away anyway. But I'd like to start to get some of these bigger projects into the budgetary cycle, so that it doesn't come at the last minute, so that we're planning ahead and we're doing the right thing. So I think we're all dovetailed into where we want to be, and I welcome your comments. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. Has anyone got any more comments on this? Are we kind of along the lines thinking that we're going to discuss this at the next climate task and finish and get their perspective as well as our perspectives?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I have a little bit of...
I wanted to say something, sorry. I did put it in the chat box. I was going to mention the lighting because I think that's a quick fix, the lighting, but you've already said that's ongoing. But the other thing that we did talk about was the new leisure centres. I think that's a big area that we can make a big impact, because we did say when we were building the new leisure centre and upgrading the other ones that we would integrate some of these cost-saving things for the climate. So I'd like to put that forward as a main area to be looked at, because they're going to try and push those forward anyway, the leisure centres. So I'd like to see something from that.
Yeah, thank you, Gloria. And you're right. I think we mentioned this at the last meeting as well, in that there's a sustainability officer that's working with the development of the plans for the new leisure centre, so that we get the best, most environmentally friendly building that we can. So that's already in track, but I think it's very important that you've mentioned that we can make sure that that is a priority. Thank you.
Councillor Peter Mosley, may I ask a question?
Of course you can.
Do we already have, apart from the lights, anything else that has been budgeted in process or in progress?
I don't believe so, but there is a small reserve for small projects. Is that correct? Is it a £20,000 reserve, Gary? For
That's correct.
Small initiatives, and quick wins. I believe that was raised for. So although we've got the Investor Save project moving forward with the input now from the Internet of Things and the smart lighting, and that's going to move ahead in budget, there's also a small pot of money should there be something that you feel that you'd like to have a crack at.
Okay, thank you. And also, are there any kind of refurb plans for St Peter's Hill? Is that an area we could look at and include? Because obviously I know there were plans, but I didn't know if there was a kind of a timed diary of events within that.
I think there was initially a plan. I think it's been put a little bit on hold because of COVID. And again, I think this is one of those things that does rely on us having a clear reshape agenda as to what the council's function might be with regards to its relationship in that building. But I think it can certainly be fed in again as if there is a, you know, if it's possible to put that in as a priority for sure. Gary?
Yes, nothing to add. As you say, there was some.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Are there any other members that are wanting to speak on this matter?
Nicola, can I make another comment to Gary, please?
Yeah, of course you may.
Gary, you spoke about £20,000. Has any money of that been spent? And if so, can we have a breakdown of what's actually been spent?
None of it's been spent, so it's all available. This is the money, to remind all committee members, that Environment OSC recommended and was carried forward through to the budgetary process, and that hasn't yet been drawn upon.
If I might say, Madam Chairman, you know, we've asked for that money. We should make sure that we find some quick wins within this financial year and actually attempt to spend that money.
Yeah, I totally agree, Councillor Dukes. Totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the reason being, members, was because we were waiting for the carbon footprint report in order to identify and understand where would be the most sense. Clearly, now we've got that information, that is going to be part and parcel of that carbon reduction plan we bring forward. What I would just say is that there's a question that will come forward as to the degree to which that money is entirely used for a small scale. Clearly it's limited, but a sizable but limited, you know, significant but limited pot for actual investments in carbon reduction, or to what degree some of it may support feasibility works. I'd need to double check what the clarity as to what the remit of its funding was, so it will only be able to be used for feasibility if that was allowed. But some of the next steps is inevitably going to be further feasibility work. For instance, Serena mentioned a few things at the beginning. For anything more major than some of the simpler stuff, there's going to need to be some technical expertise probably brought in to undertake some of that work. So those sorts of things will need to be budgeted for, as well as the actual investment in doing them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Gary. Councillor Baxter?
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Oh.
I agree that this 50,000, was it £50,000 or £20,000?
20,000.
20,000. It's a shame it wasn't 50,000.
Sorry.
It would be quite straightforward. Looking at the chart on page 46, to recommend that the Stamford Arts Centre measures go ahead. I mean, there's no better time to invest in any CapEx schemes in Stamford Arts Centre, with it being unfortunately closed. You get a reasonable bang for your buck in terms of the payback of only 5 years, and it would be a real signal to the community to say we are investing in our current buildings portfolio, and we're going to get cracking on with this, so that when the arts do come back, they are doing so environmentally.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Sorry about that, Councillor Johnston. I completely missed you in the list.
How dare you? I'd like to suggest that we talked about having solar panels on St Peter's Hill. Could we not go forward and get a costing for this, so we know one of the areas how much it's actually going to cost? Because solar panels are really good, and I do know you can get money back from them if you put it back to the grid. So could I suggest that we get a costing to see what sort of figure we're looking at for one project at least?
Yeah, absolutely.
Could I also make a suggestion? Could we actually take all these and discuss it at the Task and Finch group and kind of work together with them and bring it forward again?
Well, I mean, I'd expect that many of the members of this committee may well be taking part in the Task and Finish anyway. I think what we were talking about here was the small pot of money for quick wins. which is of course under the purview of this committee to decide how that is how that is spent. And the task and finish will be looking at the much bigger picture in terms of the the bigger ticket items and the phased approaches and how we're going to deliver this. So I mean, I would expect there to be dialogue with councillors anyway. I'm not quite sure how you'd want to move forward. I think as a task and finish, what we'll do is we'll take your recommendations from today and the clear steer that you're giving us with regards to some of the things that you're finding important, and get those flagged into the into a timetable of how we can deliver the reductions that we need. And then of course that will come back to this committee. Isn't that correct, Gary? That's the process, isn't it?
Yes, we'll take that, we'll develop that forward and bring that back.
Yeah. So we're taking your temperature here with regards to what you want to see prioritised, and then we'll get that phased in. And of course, then we'll have a better picture of how much things are going to cost and how we're going to have to budget and how we're going to have to move forward in that perspective. And it could well be quite a difficult needle to thread, but nevertheless it's something that we'll do. And then when we've got that plan that takes on board your your desires for the specific things that you wanted to see prioritised, then we can bring it back here for the committee to discuss and approve.
Okay.
For me, Chair, I would be quite happy for some of these projects to crack on. What I wouldn't want to happen is either the task and finish group or the environment committee or any other thing to be used as a delay, to cause any delay to the process of getting on with what needs to be done. So with projects which could be done relatively quickly, subject to finance, like St Peter's Hill and the Guildhall and the arts centres. What I certainly wouldn't want to go back to is the time, Councillor Mosey will remember, where we had something like 15 meetings to discuss whether or not to replace streetlights with LED measures, and around in circles for ages. I think this committee has been quite clear in saying we want to progress and we want to make progress with this emergency, and so please don't let the overview scrutiny process delay it any more than it needs to.
I do hope I'm not hearing you say you want to subvert and bypass the overview and scrutiny process, Councillor Baxter. But I take on board exactly what you said about the streetlights. That was painful, and it needn't have been. And I'm glad to say that we've moved on from there. I will point out that although it's very, very quick and easy to say subject to finance, that's actually quite a biggie, because we have to have a balanced budget and we have to work within the budget, the budgeting process to make sure that we can afford those things. So whilst it would be lovely to say, well, we can crack on with St Peter's Hill subject to finance, it's the subject to finance bit which is the bit that's going to delay it, because it has to be put in process, and not the other things, which is why, like you said, there are some things, again, Gloria's alluded to solar panels, yourself have suggested the Stamford Arts Centre measures, etc. You've got that little pot of money that can get some of these projects moving quickly. There is no ambition for us to delay anything as long as we have to. But there are going to be some challenges, and a lot of those are going to be around finance.
Okay. Councillor Crawford?
Hello, yes, thank you. Gloria's point about solar panels on St Peter's Hill is a very good idea, but I think we should be looking at that for all major buildings within SK, and not just that. I know obviously subject, but if we could find where we could get the most savings with the least expense for whatever building, I mean, that would be a good way forward. Not just look at St Peter's Hill, but other buildings as well within the district.
Yeah, I think that alludes to page 46 of the carbon of the document pack that we were talking about earlier, because there's again, it's about return on investment, and some of those take Your return is in fact measured in years. It's before how long it's going to be before you start to see a return for the investment that you've made, and obviously the longer the period of time, the less attractive it might be. So there isn't there. But I think again, in terms of our target, which is to be net carbon zero as soon as is practical before 2050, one of the key quantifiers in that table is the one where we're looking at the cost per tonne of CO, cost per tonne of carbon, basically, because that gives you an indication of what the big ticket items are going to be and what the more manageable ones are going to be, and what's providing you with, if you like, value for carbon money. And they might be the ones that you want to tackle sooner rather than later, and the ones that are the bigger ticket items are the ones that we're going to have to seriously plan for, and are going to be the biggest challenges, and that in effect technology might not exist for yet.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on, can I just ask if Councillor Wotton wants to make a comment on this?
On which particular subject, Chairman?
Well, we're still talking about the carbon footprint agenda item, Councillor.
I want to speak on the public space protection order.
I was just checking because we're not quite there yet.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Cllr.
Although I agree with everybody saying which projects we want to get, there's no actually saying which ones we want to do. Maybe we need to actually sit down and actually have a topic of which projects we actually want to be putting forward later in our work, when we actually know what the task and finish group have actually decided and the time frames that needs to be done.
That's why I said about getting an estimate of the solar panels. We need some figures to work to.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's
the recommendations that we've got for this, that we propose them and move on to something else. So we're just going round in circles at the moment.
I'm happy to, could I just say, I mean, we'll take on board all of the comments that you've said here and feed those into the task and finish. I think what I would suggest is that we come to you with we get the officers to do a small amount of work looking at things like solar panels and the like, just so that you're aware of that when you want to make a decision about about the £20,000 quick win pot. And get that in track, because I mean that's just a vote that you need to have when you've got the numbers there, and we can settle things going. I would imagine that the solar panels will be a lot more than £20,000, but nevertheless, if we bring that to you, and then like I said, if you want to propose and vote on the recommendations, and then we'll take that forward.
Yeah, are you proposing that,
Madam Chairman, I just wonder if we could agree that for the task and finish group, for the next meeting, rather than sort of starting again from square one, I just wonder if we could ask the officers if they could come with sort of 3 options as to how we can spend that £20,000 quick win money.
I thought,
Yes. Councillor Mosley, would that be?
Yeah. I mean, I more or less suggested that. I mean, we've had some suggestions from you with regards to solar panels, and then Councillor Baxter mentioned about the Stamford Arts Centre. Yeah. If you want us to try and think of another one, we can try and think of another one. And that's fine. We can bring those all to you, and so you can have a choice if you wanted to. I'm very much steered by the committee in that respect. So if there is something that a committee member has a particular desire for, that might be a good project, then obviously please let me know.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I'm quite happy to second Councillor Cottier's recommendations, that we follow the recommendations as written in the agenda pack. Can we go to the vote on that, please?
Thank you. Councillor Nikki Manterfield.
For.
Councillor John Cottier.
For.
Councillor Ashley Baxter.
For.
Councillor Phil Dilks.
I'm for, but I'm assuming that it also includes that the action that we're going to do, that we are going to have the task and finish in September. Thank you. But I'm for.
So is that an act? Do you want that as an action note or a recommendation? Sorry, Councillor.
I just want a firm commitment that we're going to do it.
Yes.
There will be another task and finish group, and the sooner the better. I've only just had the action notes to approve from the last meeting. We've been working on stuff as well, Phil. There'll be another meeting, don't worry.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Gloria Johnson.
For Peter, why don't you look at another area with these lights that dim and go on?
Yeah.
Another area that you could use.
Sorry, can we just continue with the vote? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, just I'm smacked.
Councillor Judy Smith.
For.
And Councillor Helen Crawford.
For.
Thank you very much for that. Can we move on to the next agenda item, please? Oh, hang on. Agenda item 8.
Agenda item 8. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Carry on.
Yeah, I was throwing myself into it. I forgot to wait to be invited. Sorry. Thank you for this. This is the review of the public space protection orders. Public space protection orders were introduced 3 years ago to replace other legislation, and we adopted them within this council, and they need to be reviewed every 3 years. So we are, in fact, I think it was almost possibly my first ever meeting as the cabinet member for the environment back then, where we considered these. We have several public space protection orders throughout the district. If I just look at the recommendations quickly first before I move on, so that we consider the existing public space protection orders and either agree with them with or without amendments as a basis for public consultation, because the thing about public space protection orders is it's about the consultation process more than anything else. That we consider and give view on the request from Market Deeping Town Council to implement a public space protection order to control dogs at the Spinney Market Deeping Cemetery, and that recommend to the Cabinet Member for Commercial Operations that public consultation is undertaken in respect of the extension of the existing orders and the proposed new public space protection order. So what we're asking here is for the committee to consider the current public space protection orders that we have, to advise whether they think there should be any amendments to them or whether they should continue as is, and to look at the application for a public space protection order with a view to it being sent out to consultation. So this is not the implementation of any public space protection orders, it's about sending our existing ones or amended ones out to consultation along with the application for one. You'll all probably have looked at the paperwork. The thing about a public space protection order is that it cannot be implemented unless there is significant evidence to suggest it's required. So this is not a blunt instrument and cannot be used as such. And that's why consultation is so important. So really, in terms of if we wanted to change or amend anything, there needs to be significant evidence to suggest that that change or amendment is valid, and that's why the consultation process is so important. If the consultation process comes back with no evidence to suggest that there is a significant requirement for that order to be changed or for a new one to be implemented, then it simply put cannot be implemented. We do have our existing ones anyway, and they're in your agenda pack, and they've been in process, and they actually fell over from the previous system 3 years ago straight into the PSPO system now. So really, is Anne-Marie on the call, Gary?
She is, yes, she is.
Yeah, Anne-Marie, have I forgotten anything, missed anything, neglected to say anything important that I tried to remember?
Good morning. No, Councillor Mosley, you've covered everything off there. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Mosley, may I ask a question? It's more of the process rather than the kind of the way we do it. Is it correct that if we're renewing a public space protection order, that we still have to go into consultation if there's no amendment or changes?
I believe it does. Could you clarify that, Anne-Marie, please?
That's correct. Part of the review is a consultation process, otherwise they will lapse and expire.
Yeah.
That's fine. And also I've got just one more other question. The paperwork that we've been given have got all the old wards and the old boundaries. Is that relevant, and do we have to update that, or is it just for the mapping process of where the PSPO kind of lies?
This will be a historic transfer of mapping across. So it's relevant to, I believe that the areas will remain the same and they might not be relevant to ward boundaries. Is that correct, Anne-Marie?
As part of the process, we can propose that the maps are updated to change them to the new ward boundaries, which I would suggest is probably more appropriate.
Thank you for that. Yeah, no, I was that's where I was going with that, really. Yeah. Thank you for that. Councillor Baxter, I see you want to ask a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. On the issue of the Market Deeping Cemetery, I just wondered, perhaps I should have gone to Market Deeping Town Council and asked them this, but why are we only looking at the spinney and not the cemetery itself?
Well, that will be to do with what they've applied to us for.
Okay, I can see Councillor Moran is on the call. I didn't know if she could add anything, or how is it possible for us or for Anne-Marie to ask whether it would be appropriate to extend the area to include the cemetery?
Well, I mean, this is an application from the Market Deeping Town Council, so it would be for, they will obviously have thought about what they wanted to include within that, and it's only for us to actually look at the application. I would suggest that probably the town council's the better place to go, but I think that the horse has galloped over the hill on that one because the application's in full print.
Well, I wasn't actually asking you, Councillor Mosley. I was asking if a member of the town council or Anne-Marie could answer the question.
Shall I answer that for you? In terms of the request for Market Deeping Town Council, I believe they wish to be proportionate and based on their areas of concern, and their area of concern was the spinney, which is why they've made the request just in respect of the spinney.
Thanks very much.
Are there any other comments from the committee before I ask the other councillors to speak?
Could you just say a little bit more about what PSPOs can be used for? Because I think we had a conversation a long time ago about unauthorised encampments and whether PSPOs were applicable, and then we've also got our bugbears about people riding bicycles on the pavement and parking on zigzag lines and all kinds of other stuff. Is there any limit to what the PSPOs can be enforced against? So, for example, in some parts of the deepings, believe it or not, children or young people sit around and smoke weed. Is there anything that can be done under PSPOs to discourage young people from sitting around smoking weed in public places?
I think there are already laws about drugs that would come under, to be fair, Councillor Baxter, but I'd take on board what you're saying. I'll pass this across to Anne-Marie, but I think the point that I'll just make before I do that is that all of this has to be strongly evidenced. So PSPOs are a tool that can be used by communities if they see antisocial behaviour, but I think Anne-Marie will probably give us a breakdown of typical examples.
Yet they can certainly be used for anything that is in a specific area that is detrimental to the quality of life of the community. But as we discussed there, they do have to be evidenced. So we would need to have information, complaints, a body of evidence that this power was necessary and justified to actually deal with the situation, and that there were no other tools that would be more appropriate to do so.
And are they enforced by the police or our own enforcement officers or PCSOs?
They can be enforced by authorised officers and the police.
And PCSOs?
And PCSOs, yes.
Councillor Dilks, did you want to ask a question?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I looked into PSPOs some time ago, and I find it interesting that most of these, in fact, probably all of them, are sort of have been inherited into the new legislation, and I wasn't actually aware that some of them existed. So I welcome the update. I certainly support the Market Deeping Town Council application for one. When I looked into them, though, it was particularly about travellers. We had a spate in the deepings of travellers sort of arriving and causing lots of problems. And we looked into it. In the end, we didn't sort of go for it. But I understood, and perhaps Anne-Marie could clarify this, that on all of them, you had to get, it was a sort of collaboration between the district council and the police. The police had to sort of give their approval to any PSPO. Am I right, Anne-Marie?
The police are a statutory consultee, and they are actually approved by the council, but we have to consult with the police and take their comments into consideration.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other committee members who would like to speak on this before I go to open it to non-committee members? Are we all happy? Mm-hmm. Okay. Can I ask for Councillor Moran, please?
Thank you. On top of being an SKDC councillor, I'm also currently Deputy Mayor at Market Deeping, and more importantly, I'm Chair of Town Hall and Cemetery. The reason that the application is purely for the Spinney is this is a central area which sits between the main formal lawn cemetery and an area of natural, that's been naturalised, shall we say, which has a pond. The only areas where we seem to find abandoned dog poo, for want of a better word, is in the Spinney. I think it's because it's quite, it's a very quiet area. It's also very heavily treed, and it's, we've had a couple of complaints where people have been sat there because they have relatives whose ashes are scattered in that area when dogs have come running through. It's sort of normal, shall we say, for a dog, once he's done his business, to then kick up the area, and it's very distressing to imagine that that's what happened. That's what's happened to somebody's ashes. We don't really have, we can't recall any incidents of finding abandoned poo in the main cemetery. I think it's because it's a lot more formal area, and which is why we only applied for the Spinney. I did put a notice about to ask people to please put their dogs on leads when they were going through this area on the Town Council's Facebook page, and it was very, very heavily supported. People seemed to be sort of frankly appalled that certain people were allowing their dogs to do this sort of thing in an area where ashes are scattered and there are benches for people to sit. So provided it's approved, which we would very much appreciate, we will be looking at signage for the area to inform people that it's now, they're actually now not allowed to do it, rather than appealing to their better nature.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Ray Wotton.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, and thank you for allowing me to speak this morning. First of all, congratulations on your appointment as Chairman of this committee. Madam Chairman, about 10 years ago, we had a drinking problem in Grantham Town Centre and also in the Wyndham Park area. And the community safety team at the time, led by Mark Jones and the late Sandy Kavanagh, proceeded to introduce a designated public place order 2008, superseded by the public space protection order. I've spoken to PC Nettleton, who was the area beat manager 10 years ago and still is the area beat manager. Spoken to him today, and he says that act has been really one of the most valuable acts that was brought in to control excessive drinking and disorderly behaviour in Grantham town centre. And from the beginning, a large number of alcohol was seized and disposed of, and now it's really reduced, and the street drinkers are not in the same locations, they're not causing trouble, and they know if they are there, that he will have no hesitation in taking that drink off him. So I support the order and the recommendation. If you look at 1.4 on your paper, it says, in considering whether the requirement should continue, the council should be satisfied on reasonable grounds that the measures continue to be necessary to prevent the detrimental effect on those in the locality or reduce the likelihood of the detrimental effect continuing, reoccurring. So I fully support this, and if it wasn't in place, the Grantham Town Centre, and I'm sure the rest of the district that's got the public space protection order, would be an unsafe place to live in. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Can I take this opportunity to kind of propose all the recommendations as presented in this agenda item, please? Can I ask for a second?
Yeah, please.
I'll second it.
Yeah.
Would you like to caveat that, Madam Chairman, with that it extends to the ward boundaries? I don't think that's in there, is
yes, absolutely. Yes, sorry. Thank you, Councillor Mosley. Yes, obviously updating the ward boundaries and making it kind of up to date. It's the prime opportunity to do that. Councillor Baxter, I see you want to speak.
Yes, please. On recommendation 2, we're asked for a review. So can I suggest that we amend the recommendation to say that we endorse the request from Market Deeping, endorse or support, or whichever word says we agree with the Market Deeping Town Council?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I absolutely agree with that. Yeah, I'm happy to change my proposal to include that.
Thanks.
So have we got a seconder, did I see? Helen, are you happy to second?
Yes, please. Thank you.
I did. I'd second.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Can we go to the vote on that, please?
Thank you. Councillor Nikki Mansfield.
For.
Councillor John Cottier. For. Councillor Ashley Baxter.
For.
Councillor Phil Dilks.
For.
Councillor Gloria Johnson.
For.
Councillor Judy Smith.
For.
Councillor Helen Crawford.
For.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we move swiftly on to agenda item 9, which is the work programme? It is documented in the agenda pack. There are a few things that I see that are kind of unscheduled at the minute. We are trying to kind of collate and bring this forward as soon as possible. I hate to keep bringing it up, but I'm well aware and recognise the hard work that all the officers and the staff have had to contend with the COVID pandemic. So a lot of things are being pushed to one side. I'm aware that we're trying to get back into a restoration plan. Things are to be confirmed, and I endeavour to get them confirmed as soon as possible. Is there any comments on agenda item 9?
Yes, please, Chair. We've got we're missing hedges, which we said we would put on the agenda, and I think that goes with trees really, because although we had a good crack at trees and member protocol for being informed about trees back September last year, I think, we never got as far as saying that we should have policies of, for example, at least a 1-to-1 replacement, and preferably a 6-to-1 replacement. When a mature tree is taken down, other trees should be put up in place. So I think there is, we made some progress last year, but there's still a lot of progress to be made. So I'd like that to be brought back, please.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to add that on. Any other suggestions? Oh, sorry, can I just, Zena, did you want to come in here?
Yes, it was just to say from the discussion earlier in the meeting, if we're we've got the agreement of the committee, I'd like to add on the carbon reduction use of the quick wins pot to our October meeting. Is that I'd say I picked that up from earlier discussion. I don't know if that accurately reflects what the committee decided at that point.
Yes, thank you.
And also, would you like me to add hedges and trees onto the to be confirmed section at the bottom, and we'll discuss the date that it comes to at a later point?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Dilks.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It would, forgive me if I'm missing something, but the next meeting just appears as a blank with nothing on that, with nothing on it. The 6th of October one. Am I missing something?
I know that there is the alcohol and entertainment licence policy that needs to come back to us, because that needs to be confirmed for January 2021. So that will be on the October work sheet. But I will ensure that other things are put on. Councillor Dilks.
And Chair, I think we said earlier in the meeting that we wanted some kind of progress on the environmental performance indicators at our next meeting.
Yep.
So can I just confirm, is that a full report to the next meeting, or an update on where we are?
My understanding was an
update. Okay, so would that just be a verbal update reported to the next meeting from the cabinet member?
No, thank you. We've set out 7 environmental performance indicators. I would like to see figures, preferably for 2 years or more, on each of those issues, and if that's not available, then an explanation as to why they're not available.
Okay.
Nicola, I've got a couple of items as well that might be useful.
Yes, please, John.
One of them is the report on the big clean that's apparently restarting up again. And the other one is, recently I had a piece of legislation come through, went to the committee, which was planning and business law, pavement licenses. But is that actually covered under our remit? And if so,
I think the pavement licence is there's a new piece of legislation that's come out, and it will be it's been delegated, I think, to Karen in consultation with myself when it comes out. I think it might come out in the next day or two. It might even have come out, in fact, and will be. I think it's the county council which currently have all of the infrastructure in place to deal with pavement licences because of their highways objectives. But the legislation gave the option for districts to take it on if they wanted to, and I think we've come to agreement that it will probably go to LCC because they've already got the infrastructure. This is very much COVID related and very fast moving in that they want something so that basically these businesses can get open and up and running as quickly as possible. So I don't think, I think the ship will very much have sailed by October.
Okay.
I was just checking because it's something that passed my desk, and I thought if it's something we need to be looking at, then we should be looking at it. And the other one, Zina, I did ask at the last meeting for cycling to be put onto the October. Obviously, not missed.
Good one.
Okay, I do apologise about that. That's still in the to be confirmed, isn't it? I'll move that up to the.
But that's of course if Nicola still wants to do it.
No, I'm happy with that.
Okie doke.
Right, cheers. And can Ashley actually say to what he actually wants from cycling would be a good idea before we actually get having a big discussion. Okay, Ashley?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much.
Did you want to say anything else, Councillor Baxter, or are we?
Yes, please. Just to say, if I do put some comments in about the cycling, I hope that officers will take them on board before they write the report. That would be great. One thing that I've proposed to full council you will have seen, because it should have gone to the June council meeting, and it should have been discussed last week at July, but for various reasons it wasn't. Is a kind of response to COVID. There's a lot that we as a council can learn from COVID in terms of ways of working, use of video conferencing, use of mileage, the way that we manage wildlife. And I think it would be worth having I don't know if you're allowed to call it a brainstorm, but a kind of a thought about how we can embed the positive aspects of the lockdown and the COVID. I mean, it's been an awful time for everybody, but there have been some lessons that we can learn. And given that it's on the council agenda, I've moved a motion to take it to the Environment Committee. If you could say that we were going to be prepared to discuss it in December, then I could probably edit that motion and take up a bit less of full council's time.
Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Lovely. Well, I haven't got any other business, really, except for saying I just want to thank all the officers and